Hey everyone, it's Bob with another FINOP Controller webcast. This week we're going to do an overview of net capital. In the coming weeks we'll do a deeper dive into the rule as well as the net capital process. Broker-dealers must maintain a minimum amount of liquid assets for use by a bankruptcy trustee if the firm fails and is required to liquidate its operations. Now, the firm must also provide customer protections, and that means that when broker-dealers handle customer property, they are required to obtain possession and control of that property and not use it as part of the firm's operations. We've discussed the customer protection rule, and that's 15c3-3 in previous videos. In the early 70s, the U.S. Congress wanted to improve protection for broker-dealer customers. It passed legislation establishing an insurance fund to protect customers of broker-dealers, and this act required the SEC to write financial responsibility rules for all broker-dealers. Firms cannot use customer property in their business, and it must maintain a level of solvency so that they can return the customer's property if the business fails. This level of liquidity is called minimum net capital. If the firm's net capital falls below this level, it must cease business and return the customer's property. There are two methods for determining a firm's minimum net capital: the aggregate indebtedness method, or AI, and the alternative method. The aggregate indebtedness method is expressed as a maximum leverage limit, where the maximum aggregate indebtedness is expressed as 1,500% of net capital, or conversely, minimum net capital can be expressed as 6 2/3 of AI. The alternative method is based on the amount of the firm's customer receivables. This method requires the firm to maintain a minimum net capital of 2% of customer receivables, which limits the amount of customer lending a firm can do. Both methods have a minimum dollar amount for net capital. For the AI method, it can be as low as $5,000 depending upon the types of business the firm is engaged in. For the alternative method, the minimum is $250,000. Each method requires the firm to use the higher of the calculated limit or the minimum dollar amount. With the next slide, we'll discuss how to calculate the firm's net capital. To calculate a firm's net capital, start with ownership equity prepared using generally accepted accounting principles. Subtract non-allowable assets. These are illiquid assets that can't be converted into cash within 30 days or less. Deduct charges on marketable securities. They're known as haircuts. And subtract other deductions and charges for various situations. The final result is the firm's net capital. Once you've determined the firm's net capital and its minimum net capital requirement, subtract the minimum net capital from the net capital amount to determine the firm's excess net capital. If the excess net capital is negative, you have to cease business and notify FINRA and the SEC. For positive amounts, you have to perform an additional test to determine if the firm can continue to grow its business. That's it for this week's webcast. During the next several weeks, we'll be discussing the various different components of calculating net capital, as well as determining minimum net capital. If you have any questions, please send an email to bob@rmmilburnconsulting.com or contact me through LinkedIn. Thanks again for your time.